Is tax avoidance acceptable during a crisis? Welcome to the 13th episode of IBFD's Tax Takes series of short videos on the global tax implications of the COVID-19 crisis. I'm Barry Larking, and I'm very happy to have with me today Victor van Kommer, who is not just Director of Tax Services at the IBFD and Professor of Tax Policy at the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands, but he has a special reason for being here in view, or another special reason, in view of his previous position in the management team of the Investigation and Intelligence Division of the Dutch Tax Administration. And the reason why that's so appropriate is because in this episode, we will be focusing on three aspects of those issues: tax avoidance, tax evasion, and tax compliance, and how they fit into the COVID-19 crisis. So welcome, Victor. Let me start off with the tax avoidance issue. Most people would intuitively think that if tax avoidance is a bad thing generally, then it's also a bad thing during a crisis. But there are those who might consider that given the current climate where tax administrations and governments are trying to be more lenient, nicer to taxpayers to help them through the economic crisis, then it might be appropriate to relax tax avoidance measures. Now, what's your view on this?
Thank you, Barry, for this question and to be here. I think in your question is already in kind of contradiction. The word relaxing means that normally it has to be stressful. It sounds almost like a teacher to say to his pupils from, now maybe the coming 2 or 3 weeks, I won't punish you anymore. To be relaxed from a point of view of tax authorities is a dangerous thing, because you go back to the monitoring role of a tax authority, or at least the normal auditing or in intelligence, is that in every case you have to look to three, say, kind of categories or topics in monitoring a taxpayer. And that is, first, of course, is the bookkeeping, the records and the tax return. Is that correct? Secondly, it is complete. And the third one is it paid or addressed on time? Dus that are three different elements. And I can understand that with the element on time, in paying, etc., you're a little bit more relaxed in your wording. But for the other things have still to be correct and complete, even when there is... Sorry.
So,
yes.
well, your reference to correct, I mean, isn't that the key question? What is correct? Is what is correct during the normal state of affairs perhaps no longer so correct during a crisis such as the COVID-19? And could you not simply say relaxing tax avoidance rules as such is simply the equivalent, the informal equivalent of cutting taxes, which is also being done as a measure to help taxpayers through the crisis?
Cutting taxes is, of course, a legal position of a tax authority. That's the Ministry of Finance. That is part of the regulations. But a tax administration has to monitor. Has to monitor things are correct and complete, etc. The things I just said before. Even in a crisis, maybe there is less turnover, there's no profit, there are losses, but still that one you have to monitor, or it is correct. Because imagine, and that happened also in previous crises, when a tax administration is not monitoring anymore, that it means also an open invitation to have huge losses, what you can carry forward for a couple of years. And then
many years in some cases.
In many years. And that means that also your tax base is corrupted in the future. And we have seen that quite often, that even when the recession is over, that the years after, the tax administration still take less money in due to the losses during the recession period, or what's happening now as well. Dus you have also to monitor. And I think also the role of a modern tax administration is to guide the taxpayer. And normally I think we talk about corporates, or it is large or small or medium, to monitor and to support them through such a period. It is not only to be the repressive role and to see I will punish you and I will collect some additional money. I think then we are on the wrong way.
Okay, so make sure that the relationship stays positive, and keep monitoring insofar as that's possible, obviously, because that's one of the challenges during the crisis. If we take up, or if we move on from what I think most people would consider to be legal tax planning, aggressive tax planning, and move into the sort of illegal side of things, tax evasion and fraud, there have been a lot of reports in the press about scams that are specifically related to the COVID-19 crisis and the tax relief measures that have been granted, and people abusing those measures. In the UK, there has been a report that £7 million has already been lost to such scams, and there are similar concerns in other countries. What's your take on this? What kind of scams are we talking about, and what can tax administrations do, or should they be doing, to counter them?
Good. First of all, you have to see that tax base you can divide in different groups. Of course, you have, of course, the reliable, compliant taxpayers. They will probably do the same like in the future as well. Then you have, of course, a category who is maybe challenged to be a little bit less correct. That's a very dangerous group because you have to bring them back to normal. But then you have, of course, call it criminals, people has already always the idea to make use of crisis. And that is a notorious group, and that, of course, differs per country. But they are in this business. That is their main profession. So they will find always a way. Of course, you have to fight against it, but you have to be very careful that this group is not growing in this period. And it is not only what I said to manipulate, of course, with losses and in companies and entities, but it is also a period ideal for money laundering, because a lot of companies are suffering. There is a lot of illicit money in the economy, and it is a beautiful period to layer that, because companies need money, they need cash. And to have, of course, loans with very nice conditions in the beginning is for criminals a very nice period to layer down their money. And tax administrations are not always equipped because they are focused on tax to tax profits and turnovers. But you need to have a kind of other, I think, mentality to see from what is the source or the origin of the source of the money in such a company. Why certain companies can survive in this period, because normally maybe they would be bankrupt. So you have to have a kind of different mentality to scrutinize this kind of schemes.
Right. So I mean, what you're saying, I think, is almost similar to the first case of tax avoidance. Is the monitoring function is crucial here. Don't lose sight of what taxpayers are doing. And maybe there's a role for a new type of whistleblower, because, of course, again, monitoring is fine in normal circumstances, but more difficult during the crisis. Less resources, people sick at home, and so on. So yeah, maybe whistleblowing is an alternative means of doing that.
Even there, you have to be careful. If you know your taxpayer and over a long period, then sometimes a whistleblower can give you information. Think, hey, that changed my story, but I can understand that. If whistleblowing is just to bring in taxpayers, maybe without any reason, because there's a kind of conflict or there's a kind of competition going on, then you have to be very careful as a tax authority.
Yeah, okay, so it can backfire. Let me ask you a question. In the US, there have been reports that over 1 million economic impact payments, as they're called, that have been handed out by the US government to taxpayers to ease the impact of the COVID-19 crisis, that over 1 million of those payments have been sent to people who are already dead or were already dead. Now, obviously, there's no tax evasion involved in that case, but one can well imagine that the families of those recipients may well have cashed the checks and already spent the money. My question to you is, what should, which of course is not the intention and probably is technically illegal, what should the tax administration be doing in those circumstances? Should they be going after those families, or should they be taking a more relaxed view?
You're using again the word to be relaxed. no, you can be relaxed. First of all, when these payments about 1 million, it is a clear sign that your registration is not in order or your IT system is not in order. And that falls back on you during the crisis. Because there you have to make things in order. That is your throughput in our organization, your processes has to be in order. Maybe you have not the time now to fix that, but that is a clear call to fix that so soon as possible when this crisis is over.
Yeah.
Second thing is, and I think 1 million is a lot, but normally spoken, when you have such a measure, you always calculate that you think, hey, maybe there is 2 or 3% is maybe illegal, but still you want to go ahead with 97%, and you take in account that this kind of things happening, and you will solve that afterwards.
Yeah.
But again, it is the same like in other things. It is not only during crisis. We have also in the European Union carousel fraud in VAT. If you don't know the individuals, the beneficial owners behind this kind of schemes, then you are lost. Dus it is not only about the entities, it is not only about the request, but it is also, and finally, in avoidance, or especially in evasion, what is the individual, the beneficial ownership behind it? And if you discover that now, then you're a little bit late, and it says something about your past.
Right. Okay. So again, timing is important. Don't just sort of, let everything happen. On that timing point, if we move over to tax compliance, and you've already mentioned the deferral of taxes is something that is okay. That doesn't sort of as such encourage tax avoidance or bad practices, but it is certainly a deviation from the normal tax compliance rules. Yeah. It's one that generally seems to be accepted in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. But generally speaking, do you think that across the board, again, I'm sorry to use the word, relaxing the rules on tax compliance is a good thing during the crisis?
It is about, I think, what is the consideration about all these kind of things is that taxpayers as economic subjects has still trust in the system. And that means that you want to trust in the system means also trust in the economy. So that even tax administration is playing maybe a little bit a role as a bank, because it is pouring, of course, money in the economy. I think that is a good sign. That is a good sign. And it is not only about money, because at this moment you have to be aware during this COVID-19 period that a lot of people in the lockdown couldn't even spend money. There's also a lot of savings going on. Very strange. There's a lot of savings in this period because people are not spending this money.
Yeah.
Because I believe in compliance. For instance, a nice example, Greece is doing that. They say, hey, you get a relief in your VAT. Of course, VAT has to be paid definitely by your consumers, but you have not to pay your VAT. I think for 25% and relief when you keep your employers on your payroll. And that's very important, because then citizens, taxpayers has the feeling I have still my job. And when a tax administration plays that role, I think that's very important.
Okay, so basically you're saying there's a sort of like a balance. On the one hand, of course, it's not a good thing for many reasons for taxes not to be paid or for rules not to be applied. But insofar, there are also positive spin-offs from that. And in particular, the enhancement of the relationship, the trust that taxpayers have in the tax administration, if that is helped by that kind of move, then there is a rationale for it, so it's a good thing. Well, I think that's important to keep that balance in mind, and I think with that we have reached the end of our very short time available during the video. So I'd like to thank you very much, Victor. There's so much more that we could have talked about on these three topics, but thanks very much for giving your insights on them. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in. And if you'd like to see more of the IBFD's Tax Takes videos on the COVID-19 tax implications, then please check out the IBFD's website. Thanks once again, Victor.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Bye.